I'd like to bring the meeting of the San Mateo Planning Commission of October 22nd to order. Would you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ryan, would you read the roll call, please?
Commissioner John Ebnetter.
Present.
Commissioner Romero Maldonado.
Present.
Commissioner Margaret Williams.
Present.
Vice Chair Ellen Mallory acting as chair this evening.
Present.
And Chair Mike Etheridge is absent and excused.
First order is to approve the minutes. Does anyone have any suggestions or changes to the minutes? We have a new copy at our desk. There are no changes. Is there a motion?
I motion that we approve the revised minutes for the September 24th meeting.
Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We're going to open up the meeting to the public comment period. This is an opportunity for residents to speak to matters not on the agenda tonight. Are there any speaker slips for the public comment period?
No.
Public comment period is closed. We're going to move to item number 2, which is 866 View Ridge Drive, a single-family dwelling design review and special use permit. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. My name is Philip Brennan. I'm the project planner for planning application 16-074. Before I discuss the project in detail, I think it's informative to review why this planning application is being brought before the Planning Commission again. I know that we have some new commissioners that did not participate in the original or the initial review of this planning application. I'm not going to go over every point in time here, but I did want to highlight some of the pertinent dates in terms of processing this application. Please note, Attachment 3 provides a more detailed timeline of this project should you want further background or additional context. This application was submitted in August of 2016. At the request of the applicant, the application was referred to the Planning Commission for hearing and action in April of 2018 and subsequently reviewed by the Planning Commission at its June 26th meeting and approved by the Planning Commission. The project was shortly thereafter appealed by a group of neighbors. However, that appeal was rejected on the technical basis after it was discovered by staff that there was substantial errors in the project plans that the Planning Commission took action on. As such, the appeal was rejected and the applicant was requested to correct those errors and to bring back the project before the Planning Commission for re-review, which brings us to today. I should say that staff worked with the applicant for well over a year to ensure that the project plans are accurate to the greatest extent possible. A quick overview of the project site. This parcel is located in the R1B zoning district. It's approximately, or just under 37,000 square feet in size. It's surrounded by both single and two-story homes. The site slopes downward from the front to rear and slightly uphill from the east to west. The immediate neighborhood is primarily composed of traditional ranch-style homes. The majority of the homes along the north side of the View Ridge Drive are single-story, as is this proposed project. This project brought before you today requires 2 planning entitlements: a special use permit for the complete demolition of the exterior walls and roof structure of the existing residence, and a single-family dwelling design review for the construction of the replacement single-family residence. A material sample board is available if you want to pass that along. As part of the necessary findings for approval of the single-family dwelling design review entitlement, a project structure's site plan and landscaping must be consistent with the adopted R1 single-family dwelling design guidelines. The design guidelines address construction of new or partially replaced single-family homes and second-story additions to existing single-family homes. The guidelines are concerned with how a building's size, architectural character, and relationships to the street and nearby homes contribute to a successful neighborhood. The primary issue raised by residents in the area pertained to view impacts due to the roof repitch. The proposal was to go from the existing home's flat pitched roof to a traditional 412 pitched roof. It should be noted that this subject home is the only house on this block and within the immediate neighborhood that has a flat roof. While the city does not have an ordinance in place to protect views, the design guidelines acknowledge the most important views as views from primary living areas such as living, dining, kitchen areas, or common areas, rather than from secondary rooms such as bedrooms or bathrooms. The guidelines speak to respecting established views, recognizing established views from the primary living areas of neighboring homes, and designing additions or new homes to minimize blockage of those views. It should be noted that the design guidelines do not quantify in square footage or percentage an acceptable amount of blockage, or whether the blockage is cumulative or based on individual windows in each room. The design guidelines also speak specifically to view equity, neighboring views being maintained to similar level that is enjoyed by the proposed home addition, balancing the private rights to views from all parcels so that no single parcel should enjoy a greater view right. The project is proposed as a 1-story home with a common 412 pitch. However, the homeowner could develop this lot with a 2-story home, impacting views at a much greater extent, as plate heights are permitted up to 24 feet and overall building height of 32 feet. So this project is respecting view equity by maintaining a 1-story home rather than a 2-story home. It's worth mentioning that the project's previous design was approved by the Planning Commission, in part based on findings of approval, including the project's substantial conformance with the single-family dwelling design guidelines. With that said, the applicant has proposed some modifications to the design that, in staff's determination, will further address some of the stated concerns from the neighbors, which I'll go through now. The applicant has reoriented the building footprint of the residence to be more closely parallel to the front and side property lines. The previous building's orientation elongated the length of the structure, resulting in additional view blockage for the adjacent properties located uphill, and particularly 872 View Ridge. As you can see here, let me use this pointer. This is the farthest rear point of the originally approved building design. And so the building has been rotated on its axis to more closely parallel this side property line, as well as the fact that the building is now being proposed roughly 11 feet shorter than the approved design. And those factors should lessen the impacts, the view impacts of the neighboring properties, particularly uphill. As mentioned, the applicant is proposing to reduce the overall length of the building by approximately 11 feet. The elevation in red reflects the previously approved plans, and the blue elevation reflects the current proposal. Both of these designs are set back at 20 feet, or were proposed to be set back at 20 feet. And so you can see the view impacts of the new design will lessen the views or increase the views from those properties on the adjacent, or up the hill from the subject property. In addition to the noted changes, the applicant has modified the left elevation of the proposed home by reducing the overall number of windows facing 872 View Ridge. The previously approved design had 8 windows along that elevation, and this proposed design reduces that number to 6. This will serve to reduce privacy conflicts with residents of 872 View Ridge Drive. In addition to those noted design modifications, the applicant has also agreed to plant privacy shrubs along the west elevation to provide additional screening between the subject property and 872 View Ridge. This stipulation is included as a condition of approval, number 20, and that can be found in attachment 2 of the staff report. And this is the area where these plantings will be located. These are mini suites with bedroom and bathroom windows, and those privacy screening shrubs will be located directly in front of those windows. To help visualize the proposed design modifications, the City commissioned the same photo simulation consultant that was previously commissioned to produce photo simulations of perspectives taken from the 3 uphill neighbors at 872, 878, and 900 View Ridge. Additional photo simulation perspectives are included in attachment 6. I'm just providing a few examples here. This is the perspective of the new proposed design. Again, the shortened building length as viewed from the living space of 866 or 872 View Ridge. This is from the living room of 878 View Ridge. I also have available slides that comparatively look at the view perspectives of both the approved and the proposed designs side by side, should the commission want to see those. It's staff's determination that the project is compliant with all applicable zoning district development standards and substantially compliant with the city's single-family design guidelines. As noted, the city does not have a view ordinance. However, the city's design guidelines suggest maintaining neighboring views to a similar level that is enjoyed by the proposed addition or new home. While this project does impact established views of the bay from the primary living areas of uphill neighbors, the views are partially, not fully blocked, as indicated on the photo simulations. Staff has concluded that these impacts are the reasonable expectation for most traditionally designed single-story pitched roof-style homes and does not create greater view blockage than other homes along this block. The proposed design is well under the maximum permitted development limits in terms of floor area, plate height, and overall height as indicated in the table. Lastly, the proposed design modifications serve to further lessen the visual impacts of the previously approved design. While the changes may not completely resolve the expressed concerns of the neighbors, they do have a compounding effect in terms of reducing or lessening the view shed impacts associated with the previously approved design. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission find the project exempt from California Environmental Quality Act based on Class 1, 15301 existing facilities, and Class 3, 15303 new construction or conversion of small structures, categorical exemptions, and also approve the single-family dwelling design review and special use permit planning entitlements. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have. Please note the applicant has informed me that they do not have a formal presentation, but the homeowner is here and is available to respond to questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time? No?
I guess I was just going to make note of, I made a couple notes. One thing was that it looks like there's now a flat roof in the middle of the structure, which helps to reduce the height. And I just wanted to confirm that. Whereas before there was a full, like, hip roof.
Right. That ridge, that top ridge has been flattened out.
Yeah.
And to help reduce those visual impacts.
So that would be a different material, that would be a built-up roof, for instance, instead of the tile roof that's proposed, I would imagine?
I'm not quite sure. The applicant is still proposing the S-tiled or roof
Okay.
tiles.
Yeah, it looked like in the roof plan, like that was the case. There had been a concession to keep it at, a lower height, but in doing that, you created a small area of a flat roof, which would be, I guess it could be visible from somebody above, which will be just like probably a black or a white roof, I guess.
Right.
But it's not very big, so. I did have one other question. So I thought that before I started reading the materials, I did notice actually that there were minimal windows along the sides, which was great. I did notice, actually, if you could go back one page, back to the plan, I did notice that the kitchen has a really, quite a long wall with no windows on the side at all, and that's great for the neighbor. That's a lot of space without windows. Have you thought about increasing, have they thought about, I guess, the architect or the homeowners, thought about increasing the window over the sink so that you get a little bit more, sense of the outside while you're in the kitchen? Because there's really no windows on that, I don't know what that dimension is. It's like 20-something feet.
Looks like 23 feet 7 inches. I would let the homeowner respond to that.
Pardon me?
I would ask that the homeowner respond to that.
Okay.
My name is Ferdinand Vera. I'm with the design group, True Design. Happy to answer any question you have.
Hi, my question was, have you considered increasing the window over the sink since there are no windows in that 23-foot long section of the kitchen? There's been a great, obviously a clear concerted effort to reduce the windows on the side, view of the neighbors. And there's an opportunity for the view out to the foliage of the back part of the property.
That's a great suggestion, and we will greatly consider it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any other questions.
We will open the public hearing to hear any comments from our audience. Are there any speaker slips?
I do not have any. Are there any speakers that would like to come forward?
And would you please state your name for us?
Todd Psyche. I live at 872 Viewridge. Regarding this extra window, that window is directly facing our backyard, so there would be no foliage, I guess, per se.
No, I was proposing a window to increasing the size of the window over the sink, which is at 90 degrees to this one. So it's.
Oh, it's not. So it's
because-
not this.
Right,
wall
because
here.
there's no window there
Got
on
it.
the top left portion of that top
Okay.
elevation.
Then I don't have any issue with that.
Yeah, right there. It's a big kitchen, and
Sure.
further ventilation would be nice.
Yeah, I can understand that. That's fine. I guess one of the issues that has come up in the past, we've brought it up to the commission when we had our meeting, is the amount of development they've done, or actually the backfill of the hill down the hill. When they did the initial demo of half the house, they proceeded to bring in about close to 100 truckloads of dirt into the back of the house to the hill. There was weeks of probably construction going on down the hill. I don't believe there, and we've actually checked with the city, that they did not have a permit for that. I know that construction was stopped because of that. There were rocks coming down the hill from the not View Ridge, but Laurelwood neighborhood. One of the neighbors actually called and stopped the construction going on there. So as a neighbor that lives next to, a possible hazard, we want to know what the city has done to determine if that landfill that they've put in is safe for the neighborhood. There is a history of some permanent walls being put up behind my house and my other neighbor's house because of previous issues of unstable ground. So being that they're next door to us, they haven't done any, we haven't seen any permits or anything done for, land stabilization or anything. We want to know what the city has for that.
I'm happy to speak to that. As noted in the staff report, in January of 2016, the applicant was having soil transported to the project site to backfill the rear portion of the lot. The project's engineer had the soil compacted to 95% relative compaction, which is an industry standard, as I understand it, to ensure the newly placed soil stays intact. We were made aware of this unpermitted work, and a third party did a soil report on the project site and concluded that the existing conditions, this is post-compaction, met relative compaction thresholds, and confirmed there was no issues with slope stability, and that the drainage pattern was unchanged. And our deputy director of public works at the time reviewed those reports and concluded the same, and that the site was stable and the compaction was adequate.
Okay, I understand that. We have not been shared as a neighbor, any of the work that's been going on, so we don't know who the third party is. I can visually see an area where the land was filled in. You can see where the existing dirt was, and there's a slight deviation where the new dirt has been put in, with minor micro cracking going along right along that ridge. You can tell exactly where the new dirt was put in. So there's a concern, and we haven't been shared any of the reports that the ground is stable, and with upcoming rains, we want to ensure that that's something that we don't have to have concern about. Is there any plans to share the reports, or how do we know that we're safe?
I'm thinking maybe we can meet with him offline to answer some of those questions.
Well, any reports or documents that we may have, I think Public Works might want to chime in, but what I would suggest is we conclude the public hearing, we get all the questions, and then we can answer them one by one.
Okay.
Rather than doing a tit for tat now. So, as we understand it, the remaining question is to what degree is there access for the public for those, any soil studies or geotech studies? So we can answer that question, but maybe we just want to see if there are any other comments or other questions that we can answer. But we'll go ahead and answer it.
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing.
So I think Trustee Scrimalia with Public Works had something to add.
So we, again, we had asked the applicant to, if any other additional work had been done on the hillside. He indicated that there has not been any work since the original compaction. So we are satisfied with the soils report that was done in 2017. I do have a copy of it, and I can share that after this item's over.
Thank you.
I have a question for Public Works. I understand that he did a reapplication. Would there be an additional soil sample study for this application, or we suffice with the 2017 report?
The 2017 support would suffice. Building may require a soils report for the foundation work, but that's separate.
Do you have any questions?
Well, I have one other comment actually about that. Along the same lines, there, in the conditions of approval is the requirement that the applicant provide a soils report. So I'm not sure if that's from the previous application or from this current application, but it's a standard requirement as a condition of approval. So that may help clarify.
Sure, that would be a standard condition of approval. As Public Works indicated, if there is no additional work, then the existing one would suffice for conformance with this condition. But I think that's something building would also review as part of the building permit. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yes.
John, did you have a question?
Through the chair. Can I see, you had mentioned a slide that you could show us side by side, previous design to current, I believe is what your statement was.
So this would be some of those slides.
Okay. And is that the only
No,
one?
I'm sorry.
Okay. So they've decreased the amount of floor area, which is lessening the hindrance of views.
Correct.
Okay. And it is the city's opinion that view equity has been maintained.
Yes.
Okay. So I've got a couple of questions for the applicant, please. So I believe that part of the discussion in 2018 was the impetus for this remodel, and correct me if I'm wrong, was to make this home a place for an elderly family member to reside. Am I remembering correctly? Was that part of the discussion?
I'll have to ask the owner because I didn't join this group until this week.
Okay.
So I'm not sure of the history.
Hi there, I'm Lou Liberty. I'm an attorney from Foster City. I was the one who presented last time. Yes, Mr. Chu's father, he's 90 years old or something, is going to be living there with him.
Okay. The floor plan itself leads me to have some questions, specifically along how you've named some of the spaces. You've got what appears to be 5 or 4 mini suites and then one new master suite, all of them having full separate bathrooms, large closets. You've got a large open space and a very large kitchen. To me, that lends me to go down the path of B&B, short-term rentals, or something not in the line that would be for a single family, let alone a single family person living alone. Is there a reason why we've got so many bathrooms and so many individual suites?
Mr. Chu is married, So he and his wife would be living there with his father. So there are 3 people who would be living there. If I recall the hearing last time, the Chews had been worked over pretty good by the city in the demands that the city was making, and they complied with all of the demands. And at the end of the last hearing, the Chews were going to get the permit. And then there was some discussion about the plans and some changes that should be made. So for the last year, I think it's Mr. Brennan, has worked incredibly diligently with the applicant. And the communication is incredible. And in spite of losing 5, 6, 8 employees, whatever they had been dealing with, we finally got the project to the point where it's ready to go. And I think that speculating on a bed and breakfast or why you're calling a room or a suite, I would have to speculate as to your motives for that. But I can tell you that they have no intention at all of being in the bed and breakfast business.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I recall the hearing and the information from the last packet. I do understand that it's been a long process, but I think that the city had presented quite a few instances where they felt that they were taking the appropriate steps in this project all along, and there had been some things that possibly they were not comfortable with that had occurred. So I don't want to blame the city, and I'm not trying to say you were turning this into a B&B. I happen to be in the construction industry. I know when I submit drawings to a jurisdiction and I label certain rooms with certain names, the jurisdiction then asks me, what am I doing with those rooms? So if you're going to call something a mini suite and not just a bedroom, I think that might lead to some questioning on some parts. So I'm not accusing, I'm asking.
Well, I think that could have been asked by Mr. Brennan.
Well, that's fine, but that's not his job, it's my job. So
Oh, okay.
that's why I'm asking.
Well, great.
Okay?
Yeah.
Why was this project originally stopped? I forget. Was it because the permit, or the demo had gone further than had been anticipated? Because when I was up there a year and a half ago, it looked like just a dead construction zone, which was an eyesore for the neighborhood. That is why it was stopped originally, because they were not following their permit status?
Going back to 2016, the original building permit application, the work being performed on site exceeded the scope of work for the building permit. And that's what initially had the city come out.
Okay. So there was, after June of 16, there was an appeal filed by the 5 neighbors, and has there been meetings with the applicant or the appellants to go over these changes, and are they supporting them now?
I'm unaware if the applicant has met with the concerned neighbors, but city staff has met with the neighbors.
That's what I mean, city staff.
Yes, yeah. I think in September, a few months ago, to discuss the proposed changes, to address any questions, and just review the project.
And the outcome of that was?
They expressed their concerns, and we also requested some information that was provided to them.
Yeah, Mr. Brennan and I both met with the neighbors. I would characterize it as the concerns that they had originally expressed were still the same concerns.
Oh, they're still the same?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
I mean, the neighbors can argue that, but my sense of it was the concerns that had been articulated back in 2016, 2017, 2018, when the original proposal had gone through, those issues were still issues for the neighbors. Nevertheless, as Mr. Brennan indicated, what we are looking at is conformance with the city's single-family design guidelines. And while I can appreciate, and without indicating who can ask what, I would just say that, number one, our review of the plans and the design guidelines have to do with the exterior of the building as opposed to the interior. Certainly, we would monitor that, and we would continue. This has come up with other building permits, but the city really doesn't have an ordinance to say you can only have so many bedrooms or the interior needs to be arranged in such and such a manner. Certainly, with some single-family homes, if we do find a violation, then we will send code enforcement out to investigate. Secondarily, I can appreciate the commission asking for the derivation or the motivation for the improvement to the house, but in terms of staff, we are not evaluating the project based on the motivation of the property owner. What we are evaluating is the exterior design, and does the exterior design meet the design guidelines. We would only review the interior to the degree that it affects the exterior. For example, Commissioner Williams mentioning the wall with the sink. Well, that's a comment somewhat on the interior, but it affects the exterior design.
Right.
So.
To the chair. Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. I had only brought up the utility of the space because that was part of the original presentation by the applicant. And I just wanted to confirm that that was still their idea. And as you had mentioned, I think there's a home somewhere in Baywood where there's been public concerns addressed to the city that facility was being modified into another type other than a single family, and there's some concerns there. So maybe that's something the city will have to look at code-wise going forward. I don't have any more questions.
No.
Would the commission like to comment then on the project?
I have a question. Is the city staff 100% in confidence that there will be no additional inaccurate plans presented to us as it was? Because we voted on actual plans that were presented to us on June 26th, and then a week later, those plans were rejected on technical difficulties. So we're 100% certain that these plans presented to us are actually the plans that will be done in construction? So we don't have to go through this process another year and a half?
I will say yes. Obviously, this took a year through many iterations of the plans, revisions, and I'm confident that the plans presented before you are accurate.
Ramiro, would you like to begin comments?
I believe this was the first, Commissioner and I, this was the first planning commission that we had, that we heard this actual application come to us. So I think I remember that discussion. So I do want to compliment the applicant on reducing the size of some of the visibility for the neighbors. I do have some issues on how these plans changed a week after they were presented to us. So I do have those reservations, and I do feel that the applicant was not 100% truthful at the time of presentation, because his historical work on doing bringing in dirt and other items to the property before permits were even issued has been red flags. However, I do remember that I did approve this application at that time. I don't see any other things presented to me to deter me from approving it this time as well.
I do not have comments. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't part of any of the previous history of this project. This is the first time I'm seeing it. So, it was interesting to get all of the history of it, but really looking at it at face value, I see that, I'm checking off where it complies, and it complies on all counts. I see that there's been a concerted effort on the part of the applicant to respond to the concerns of the neighbors, and in particular with the windows on both sides, and why I would suggest, maximizing the rear views architecturally, as opposed to, as opposed to on the sides. So I think that it appears that a lot of effort's been put into reducing the impact to the neighbors and the views, and being further in compliance, further under the FAR, further under the height limits, that kind of thing. So I don't see any concerns on my part. I would approve it.
And I will echo my fellow commissioners' comments. I do feel that this design is very attractive and it fits well into the neighborhood. I am concerned that the landscaping that has been designated in the plan here is carried out, and I think adding that to the house will make it much more part of the neighborhood. So I also will vote in favor. Does anyone have any more comments or questions? If not, is there a motion?
I will move to approve Planning Commission approved PA 2016-074866 View Ridge Drive Single-Family Dwelling Design Review and Special Use Permit by making the following motions. A, find the projects exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act as a Class 1, Section 15301, Section 1I, existing facilities, and Class 3, Section 15303A, new construction or conversion of small structures. Categorically exempt based on the findings attached as Attachment 1, and B, approve the single-family dwelling design review for the construction of a new one-story single-family residence and a special use permit for demolition of 100% of the existing structure's exterior walls and new roof structures based on the findings for approval in Attachment 1 and subject to the conditions of approval in Attachment 2.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
And this action of the Planning Commission is final unless appealed to the City Council in accordance with the San Mateo Municipal Code. And it'll take us just a few minutes to do the switch out with everybody here.
next item on our agenda is the Peninsula Heights pre-application, PA 2019-028.
Good evening, Vice Chair Mallory and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Rendell Bustos, Associate Planner and Staff Planner for Agenda Item 3 this evening, which is a study session for Peninsula Heights pre-application PA 2019-028. Peninsula Heights is a proposed townhome development located on Campus Drive. Currently, the application consists of 3-story, for-sale townhomes, each with 2-car attached garages totaling to 641 on-site parking spaces in conjunction with visitor on-site parking spaces. Approximately 3.3 acres of open space are proposed, which would be accessible to the public. The development would remove 4 existing office buildings currently occupying the sites. So the project is located on 4 existing parcels that would be merged into 2 parcels across from each other along Campus Drive, called the northern parcel and the southern parcel. Together, these parcels total to approximately 14.45 acres and are both zoned E1-1 for executive office. As previously mentioned, the current development consists of an office campus, approximately 200,000 square feet and 2 to 3 stories in size. Adjacent uses consist of offices and residences to the north and to the east in Verona Ridge and the Beresford neighborhoods. Multifamily and neighborhood commercial uses exist south of the site, and Highway 92 is located to the west of the site. The nearest Caltrain station is the Hillsdale Station, approximately 2.5 miles from the project site. Applicable codes and policies include various elements of the general plan and the zoning code, which this project data table shows that the pre-application as currently proposed would substantially conform with applicable zoning code requirements. The project proposes to provide 10% affordable units at the low income level, which would entitle the project to state density bonus standards. Given that the project is fully residential, the project is also subject to the Housing Accountability Act. Prior to this study session, the applicant held the required neighborhood meeting earlier this month. Comments and questions shared at the meeting are listed here. These included impacts of traffic, privacy, and local public schools. Comments in opposition to opening an existing emergency vehicle access lane to the public were also submitted, which staff will go into that more in the coming slides. I should note that there were a few public comments submitted to staff after the packet was released. These hard copies of these public comments have been provided to the commission. So this evening, staff is requesting the commission's input on 3 elements of the project. The first is on the project's proposed use and its appropriateness for the site and for the city. Second is on the project site plan and whether additional housing types are appropriate for the site. And last is the building design and its massing, scale, and material selection. So for a bit more on the first discussion item, the site is zoned E1-1, which in this zone, residential uses require a special use permit. The required findings that must be made to approve a special use permit is that it not adversely affect the general welfare of the community. In approving an SUP, the locational need and its compatibility with adjacent uses are to also be considered. So as shown here, Peninsula Heights will be located most immediately within the existing office campus. Residential uses do exist currently to the north, east, and south, as well as neighborhood serving retail south of the site. So one potential neighborhood impact raised by many neighboring residents is related to the emergency access vehicle lane connecting Campus Drive and 26th Avenue, and that's east of the southern parcel. So because of the change of use to residential and the site's location, the applicant has been working in collaboration with San Mateo Fire to design the site and buildings to not have to open the access lane to the public, but still provide sufficient emergency access to the site. Staff and the applicant are aware of the potential impact caused by cut-through traffic that the access lane would cause the neighborhood if opened. So currently the applicant is proposing to widen the access lane, but keep the access lane for emergency vehicles only. And separately, staff will be preparing a traffic impact analysis and transportation demand management plan to reduce potential impacts to traffic. So related to the second discussion item, both the northern and southern parcels consist of an upper and lower section given its topographic nature, each with an entry point along Campus Drive. So within both parcels, townhomes are clustered in blocks of 4 to 8 units. The units would be along private streets with individual attached garages being the main interface. Public open spaces and uncovered visitor parking are also distributed around the sites. So both the northern and southern parcel have a pretty similar arrangement consisting of 3-story townhomes. So the northern parcel consists of a density of approximately 18 units per acre with 3-story tall townhomes. And similarly, the southern parcel consists of a density of 19 units per acre, also with 3-story townhomes. So staff is requesting that the commission provide feedback to the applicant pertaining to the possibility of integrating additional housing types, which may then provide a more diverse site plan. For the final discussion item, staff is requesting that the commission provide feedback on the proposed building design. As currently proposed, the townhomes consist of a range of 1,400 to 1,900 square feet with a range of 2 to 3 bedrooms. All units consist of 3 stories with a private rooftop deck. So this image shows the building design of a sample block. The architectural style is best categorized as contemporary in its use of various materials to accentuate various building volumes. So the proposed materials include stucco, siding, and stone veneer. This is an image showing the fuller extent of the project. And again, to summarize, staff is requesting feedback on 3 items: the SUP required for residential uses, the site plan, and lastly, the building design. So to conclude, the next steps would be that the applicant will have the ability to submit a formal application with revisions based on the commission and staff and the public's input. So these are the listed anticipated entitlements, and that will be reviewed in conjunction with design review and environmental review. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant is present this evening and will be providing presentation. Staff is happy to answer any questions that the commission may have. Thanks.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions of staff at this point?
Through the chair, can you explain the access lane one more time, what the thought is there?
So given the change of use to residential, that has different demands for the fire department, given that it's got different sort of times of use, right? So the applicant has been working diligently with the fire department to ensure that that access lane not be opened. Obviously, opening that lane to 26 and connecting campus would provide a direct cut through to 92. And so the staff and the applicant are aware of that, and in the formal, we would anticipate continuing that review.
So can the lane be gated and used as an access lane, or if it's access, it's open all the time?
There is, I believe, a pretty dilapidated gate, and the applicant under these plans has shown potential to replace that gate or replace it with bollards, automatic gate or automatic bollards. So it would be kept unopened to the public, but accessible to emergency vehicles only.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret, do you have questions?
Yes, I have a question about, related to the site plan question. So you went through it quickly and said that there were 2 access points to each site from Campus Drive. And I can see that on, for instance, looking at the one on the top, I see there's an access point that goes to the first grouping, and then lower down there's an access point driveway that goes to the second grouping. Is there no ability to interconnect those just for like ease of travel for the cars, I guess? Or is it a problem due to the grades, the drop-offs?
I believe there's a pretty significant grade differential, so it's not currently open to vehicle in and through, but it is, as shown, accessible for pedestrians, but not for vehicles.
I guess I have 3 questions. A related question to that is, I don't know what how you determine this, but do we feel there's adequate guest parking or, or non-garage parking, given that some of the units have tandem parking garages, which I think is probably not as desirable as a standard two-car garage?
Yeah, the zoning code does outline that the minimum required visitor parking space is a ratio of 0.2 per unit. That said, based on the commission's feedback, the applicant does have the opportunity to revise and provide more if that's the interest.
So they're just meeting the minimum at this point with the visitor parking?
At this point, yes. Mhm.
Okay. With the tandem spaces, that seemed like a concern. And then the third question is, I can't tell from the site, from the drawings, but it doesn't look like there's really kind of a designated, like, let's say, park or children's play area or, there's landscaping, but I can't tell if any of the areas on the site are designated as like, a space for people to use.
Yeah, I defer to the applicant for the detailed use of each open parklet, but in the plans there are several parklets shown distributed throughout the site.
Okay.
In the formal submittal, we'll require that the open spaces be more clearly defined.
Okay. That's all the questions I have at this time.
I might amplify on that parking question. As noted in the staff report, this is a density bonus project, so there are certain provisions of state law that the city is required to follow. One of those includes allowing the use of tandem parking spaces. So certainly we can take a look at parking with the formal application, but there are certain reduced ratios as well as the use of tandem spaces that the state of California automatically confers on a residential project of this type because of the fact that it qualifies for density bonus.
Thank you.
And would the applicant like to give a presentation?
Sure.
At this point?
Great. Well, my name is Preston O'Connell. I'm a partner at Harvest Properties. I'd like to thank the Commission for giving us an opportunity to present tonight and for all of staff's help over the last year as we've kind of embarked on this journey to understand what might be possible at the site, multiple community outreach hearings, and so we thank you for that. By way of background, Harvest Properties is a locally owned real estate investment firm. We actually have a number of partners that live in San Mateo. We own about 1 million feet of office spread out throughout the city. We've been around for about 20 years, so we take community engagement very seriously. And as I said, we bought this property over a year ago, and we really wanted to facilitate a discussion with the community to understand what would be things that they'd be open to, what are their sensitivity points. And we got a lot of great coaching along the way, which we tried to incorporate into the site plan, which we know is really a starting point of the discussion. As we went through kind of our decision tree of what we could do with the property after we bought it, and by way of background, I know you're all probably aware, but this is obviously up on the hill, just above the Peninsula Golf Course and just below the College of San Mateo. We're flanked on all three sides by an established residential community. We have Verona Heights just to the north and Beresford just to the south. And so when we took a step back and understood what we could potentially do, because this was a struggling office campus, one of the things that we actually learned after we bought it was in the 1970s, it was converted to an office campus, but before that it was actually residential. It was supposed to be residential. And so we said, well, maybe that's interesting. Maybe there's an opportunity here to take what are starting to become functionally obsolete office buildings, take a component of them, take them offline, which is kind of a rare thing to do, retain a few of them so that we made sure no businesses were dislocated in that process, and create something new and special. And so we had two options. One was to do kind of a higher density office project, which is allowed under zoning, or a lower density residential project. And so we pursued that path after multiple voluntary community outreach efforts. One of the things that we also thought would be interesting about that is with a lower density residential project, And just given that this was developed as an office park, we actually have a lot of setbacks to the neighborhoods around us. So while we're very close to them, we're not looking necessarily right into a lot of people's backyards. We have one area that we are close to an existing single-family detached home, but we've really worked with that neighbor to come up with a bunch of concepts that would really promote privacy and thoughtful landscaping, just to make sure we're being as highly sensitive to our neighbors as possible. We thought that was a great attribute that, again, lent itself well to this type of a product. So just to give you a visual, that's what's there today, about 45 to 50-year-old office buildings. They've been underperforming the market, so we have to do some things with them, either, again, redevelop them, either as office or as residential. So this is what we've come up with. What we wanted to do is the topography creates a lot of challenges, but also creates a lot of opportunities. And so we thought maybe there's this opportunity to create like a hillside dwelling community, use the topography to our advantage. You have incredible views. We wanted to take advantage of that. What we also want to do is kind of create this meandering village, if you will. So what we do is we have 6 pocket parks that are located throughout the project. For example, in the upper left corner there, you'll see that that's a Tot Lot kids park. That came after some coaching we got from the Verona Heights community. One of the things they said was, you know, when this office project goes to sleep at night, it gets pretty lonely out here. We feel like we're on an island. So to have a new development that would bring a lot of amenities, for example, almost 2.5 miles of new refurbished walking trails or sidewalks, plus a bunch of close pocket parks, plus just having a sense of community around us and tie us to the other communities that surround it. That'd be a really wonderful thing. So we tried to do that. Some of the pocket parks, for example, have different fitness concepts along the way. So you could come down through one, go to the next one, have another fitness station. The idea was to really promote health and wellness. We would have community gardens where people who have a green thumb could come and adopt those. I'll advance here for a second. This gives you a better snapshot. So you can see Tot Lot, that would be up in the upper corner. Community spaces, community gardens. We have this great scenic lookout point at the very bottom. We think it could be a great community gathering point. We've tried to steer all the paths to those locations that would be open to the public. A dog park. So while the topography creates some challenges, we tried to really create those nodes where we could activate a sense of place and community. So just diving into a little bit deeper, I'll touch on a couple things. So this is the northern parcel. One of the things that we wanted to do is you'll see right up there in the middle, we have this topography change between what we call the upper terrace and the lower terrace. And we wanted to create an architectural staircase. Think of it as like the Lion Street steps, where people could come and gather, and then just above that would be a scenic lookout place with like a picnic table where people could gather together. So we really tried to incorporate as much of those concepts and feedback that we got from the community as possible. One of the other things that's important to note is what you see there today is a sea of asphalt, 300-foot long monolithic office buildings. So very vertically and horizontal massing's pretty intense. With this site plan, you're almost seeing a doubling of open space and landscaping from what's there today. So we've really tried to bring in a lot more programming and obviously be sensitive to our neighbors in that process in terms of maintaining privacy. This gives you just a quick snapshot of what our typical building elevation is. One of the feedback that we've been getting as part of our community outreach effort, and one of the things we're obviously here tonight to get coaching from you on, is creating a little bit more variety of product, which we're already working on in the background. We've gotten some feedback from folks' neighborhood. Maybe we could bring some single-family detached elements in here. Also potentially bringing in a little bit higher density product as well, where it could create a broader range of affordability. And that's one thing that this project could have a very meaningful impact. In fact, when we bought the project, we took a step back and said, how many homes are available for sale right now? And this was the peak summer sales market that were meeting the median home price and over 2 bedrooms in the entire city. The answer was 9. I mean, that's crazy. So I think what we're trying to do is create an entry-level home buying opportunity that could really cater to a lot of people. And so by creating a broader mixture of product, hopefully we can have that be more accessible to more folks. This gives you a sense of, you know, I wish I had a before and after shot. Actually, I think it's in your packet, but you can see there's these huge monolithic office buildings that stretch across. You can almost see some examples of it in the background versus being a lot more horizontally and vertically articulated with a lot of landscaping in between. This gives you a little vignette of how it might look living where the trail's kind of meandering through. We do have incredible rooftop views, so we wanted to celebrate that. We gave everyone a rooftop that they could take advantage with private space. As well as one of the things that was discussed earlier was parking. So we're meeting the city's parking code requirement and guest parking code requirement. Same with bicycle storage and parking. We want to have large bay windows. Great programming that would reflect the character of the neighborhood that's there. This gives you a good visual representation of what would be a height reduction of a typical office building that's there versus the residential. So you'd see a lot of reduction in height, but also the horizontal massing would change a lot as well. A lot of similar themes from the upper parcel carry through the lower one. So obviously you want to have efficient landscaping, a native palette. We want to create these little community gardens and places of opportunity to gather. We also want to have some architectural features. So wanted to create kind of a variety of different programming available. And obviously we'd love to get more coaching from the commission on that. This gives you kind of a snapshot of what our lower terrace might look like. We're trying to integrate it with the open space that surrounds us and some of the buffer that's there. One thing to note also is that the office building that you see in the backdrop right here is actually converting to a Montessori school as we speak. So there's already this kind of evolution that's happening in the office park that's converting to more of a residential experience. And they were excited to hear that the office project that's across the street from them today would potentially go away, and the stakeholders that would be there would be more sensitive to kind of traffic racing up and down the hill. People would be more thoughtful. So they were very appreciative of that. So again, to answer the question of why this makes sense in this location, well, we met with the College of San Mateo. What we learned from them, they spent a ton of time and money programming their campus. They'd like to see it utilized a little bit more, so they were excited to see potentially more housing in the area, also that their teachers and stakeholders could access. So they have gym facilities, aquatic centers, just a lot of things that would be great for any kind of home buyer to have, just a 3-minute drive away. Then a 5-minute walk down, you have the Laurelwood Shopping Center, which is a grocery store and 50 retail options and a bunch of dining options. And then on the weekends, you have this great farmer's market that's just a couple-minute drive away. So a lot of things that you could walk or just a short drive to. In closing, a couple of things that we learned actually after we bought it, which was interesting, is working with the folks at commute.org. While we're not on transit, we actually have 2 transit shuttle stops that are there. And what we also learned was the ridership of those shuttle stops are only about 30%, which means that shuttle is in potential jeopardy of losing its funding. What we learned from them was with a modest conversion of folks in the new residential development, while still maintaining a component of the office presence that was there, you would get significantly better ridership out of the shuttle. And the reason for that is right now you have a bunch of people that take the shuttle up to the office location, but then there's no one riding it back the other way. And so by having that conversion, you're going to have people riding the shuttle both directions and protect that funding potentially. So while we're not on Caltrain, we have a lot of transit orientation. We also have a class 3 bike lane that's right in front of us that we would be leveraging and using. So a lot of transit qualities, again, even though we're not right on the Caltrain stop. So in summary, we're trying to provide a lot of community pocket parks. Obviously, we have some physical, geographical, or topography constraints, a lot of walking trails. One thing I should have noted up front was by converting office, which the population of the office buildings we're looking to convert are roughly 1,100 people, 750 or so stalls, to lower density residential, which would be roughly about 700 people. You would see about a net 400 person reduction in the population that exists there today. Everyone, it's hard to understand that when you have new development, the traffic can potentially reduce, and the burden is on us and the consultants to actually prove that out. But if you look at the math, there's just a significantly higher generator of traffic coming from the office. So we would actually have either keep everything the same or potentially get significantly better in terms of traffic reduction in the area. Also, the flow of traffic would change, so not everyone would be going the same direction at the same time. Financial impacts. We're going to provide over $2.5 million for schools and transit, significant funding for parks. We're going to have 10% of our units in terms of total unit count would be the largest contributions to affordable housing in recent history. We'd be trying to protect this Caltrain stop. One of the things that we learned, I want to kind of summarize some of the key community feedback that we've received and some of the things that we're already thinking about doing is trying to improve our application. We met with all the school superintendents right up front. We knew that was very important. We got in front of that, we met with them, which they really appreciate. They usually don't get this much notice. And we learned two things. One is at the high school, they've actually been seeing a decline in enrollment because people just can't afford to live here anymore. And they said by the time that this would be built, they would have plenty of capacity to accommodate the potential high school students that would be going there. The other thing they're very excited about is the impact fees that they might get. And also the fact that another thing that we learned was that San Mateo is a flipper. I think they call it a flipper city, which means that some years the funding comes from the state and some years it comes from property taxes because it's kind of right on that threshold. And actually by converting the office to residential, there'd be a significant boost in property tax revenues, which would really help the schools. And then the elementary school administration, again, appreciated this much of a head notice, and we're working on a plan together. They wanted to go back and digest a little bit more, so we're actively involved, kind of thinking through what would work for them and how we best could communicate. Traffic injection, I think I already covered that. Broader range of unit sizes, I think some of the ideas that we had were, and this was coaching from the feedback from the community, was maybe incorporating some single-family detached in the right places, as well as maybe some higher density four-story product, townhomes, or stacked flats that could have a kind of broader range of unit sizes. That's something we're very open to. And then obviously, I'm sure a lot of folks here talk about this tonight, is we have no interest in opening up Campus Drive to 26th Avenue. I think we've met with the fire marshal, we got right in front of that day one. Once we heard that feedback, we said that's absolutely something we can rally around. The fire marshal has said we don't see, we need to work with them on that, but they think that's something that we can make work. They asked for some improvements, which we're obviously open to doing. We also talked to them specifically about the entrances in and out of Campus Drive. I think was a question from Commissioner Williams, and so we got some great coaching from them. We've incorporated that into the site plan. So we've really tried to get as much in there up front as we can, and we're obviously here to learn from you how we can make this better, but really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Would the commissioners have questions for the applicant, or should we?
I'd rather hear from the public first.
Public first? Okay. Ryan, do we have speaker slips for this item?
Yes, I have a total of 5.
5. Okay, and is there anyone else in the audience at this point that would like to fill out a speaker slip? Okay, so we'll go with the 6. Okay, we'll open the public hearing to hear from the audience. And here we go.
Do we want to use a timer?
I don't think so.
Okay. Bob Bertoldi, followed by Charles Hildebrandt.
Hi, I'm Bob Bertoldi. I live on 26th Avenue in San Mateo. I've been there about 10 years. Sounds like a great project, but I got a couple questions. When they're talking about parking and everybody has to have both cars in the garage, I know the 35 years I lived in this town, I can never get 2 cars in my garage. My kids had stuff, you always got extra things. Where are those cars gonna go if they can't get in the garage? They're just going to go on the street. There's no parking on the street. I think there's a problem. I think they have to have more parking for the people. Second, I'm concerned about the emergency gate. They said they're not interested in opening the gate. They're on our side. But the fire department might open it anyway. I think they're just deferring, saying they don't want it open, knowing the fire department's going to open it. The fire department on our side of the gate, I think the closest one is way down on 27th Avenue, maybe 100 block. There's another one on the other side of Alameda, maybe over by, I don't know, on the other side of 92. I don't know why the fire department's going that way. The closest station is on De Anza. Maybe they should build a fire station closer. So I have the feeling our neighborhood is going to change, and we don't want it to change. We're real concerned about that. We like the gate. We walk our dogs through there. We take hikes on the weekends. We do not need it opened. Thank you.
If everyone could hold their applause, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Charles Hildebrandt, followed by Annie Trannies.
Let me first say that I'm not against the project, but I think there are some things that need to be looked at. I've lived here in San Mateo for over 50 years, had a business here, and the density of housing, although needed, has gotten to the point where traffic is just outrageous. That 92, after 2:30 in the afternoon, forget it. You don't want to go down that way because you're going to be bumper to bumper for an hour. So what do people do? They get off at Hillsdale Boulevard, and they don't mind the lights and the stop signs, so they wander down Hillsdale all the way as far as they can go to get on the freeway to avoid that jam up down the hill. This is going to compound some of that. The buildings that will remain, I don't know what the impact on traffic is going to be with, I think that's been conveniently forgotten. To me, 3 and 4, or I don't know if it's 4 bedrooms, 2 and 3 bedrooms, is going to produce anywhere from 700 to, what did I figure here? I think as high as 875 cars. There are going to be children in here and teenagers, and they're going to want cars. You're going to have 2 and 3 cars in every one of these places. What do you see now? Just think of your own families. I know what it was with me when I had my house near Hillsdale High School. So the traffic impact is great. Now, the thing that I'm most concerned about, I sold my house after my wife passed away and the kids moved away. And I went up to the Oakview Apartments. I have a nice 3rd floor unit. I look all the way out to Mount Diablo. It's beautiful. I enjoy it. I've been there for years and years. My concern is that canyon. We've been very, very fortunate. The growth in that canyon now has reached proportions where it is extremely dangerous. If no way is proposed to keep people out of that canyon, and I heard this gentleman say he's walked his dogs and everything over there, they don't know they're trespassing. That's private property. Most of it belongs to the people who own the apartment houses and the shopping center and the condos that are south of there. There is a fire danger there beyond belief. And I don't know what can be done to remove some of it or what. But if you don't keep a barrier, I mean a real barrier, to keep people from this development going into that canyon, is going to be nothing but trouble. Now, the only access is at the lowest point in that canyon, where the last building is in this development. Right now, in order to keep the cars out of there, which they were going in there are 2 posts with a chain. That has to be an impenetrable barrier except for the fire department or the police department. We've had homeless people in that canyon. The police have had to route them out. People used to dump things in there. There are actually 2 or 3 cars down near the creek where somebody just pushed it over the cliff back in the 70s. They're still there. That creek down there also is the main source of relief of all the rainwater in the area. That goes out to a pipe to the bay. In the wintertime, when the rain comes down, that is a roaring stream. It's a river. The other thing is that people are not going to realize is the noise that canyon can produce. It is a virtual echo chamber. We had coyotes in the canyon. Well, the coyotes, when they let loose, everybody came out of their apartment to look. I mean, the noise was decibel level you wouldn't believe. That noise from the other side, where these units are going to go, are also going to contribute to noise in that canyon, and made louder by just the physical dimensions of it. It's just a canyon that comes like a V to the bottom where the creek is.
Could you bring your comments to a close, please?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Could you bring your comments to a close, please?
Yes, I know I talked too long. But I think like I said, I have no objection to it, but I think it's too dense. Also, don't like the design. It reminds me too much of what happened down at Bay Meadows.
Thank you.
Annie Trannies, followed by Jing Lee.
Hi. I've never done this before, so it's like my civic duty. I feel good. My name is Annie. I'm not originally from California. I'm from Texas, so I love good development projects. Trust me. My concern, though, is that I am a mom with 2 young children, and my concern is about the possibility in the future of opening up the fire lane at the top of 26 to make a thoroughfare from these townhomes down to Alameda. I know there's been a lot of talk that won't happen, but I'm just concerned about kind of what would happen in the future. Currently, the speed of the cars coming down the hill on 26th Avenue is very fast, and I'm talking to you, Porsche Cayenne. So fast that I'm hesitant to have, you know who you are, that I'm hesitant to have my own children play in my front yard. In fact, I've only lived here 2 years in San Mateo. We used to live in San Francisco. And I have seen 3 car accidents and 2 car swipes on 26th Avenue. In fact, my husband, who is an attorney, was actually subpoenaed this week to come in and testify for a car accident that happened on 26th Avenue that ended up being a criminal case. Adding 700 residential parking spots will not make this safer. Our street is extremely narrow, and there's barely enough room for cars to park on the street, traveling in both directions. I am concerned that if once these 291 townhomes are built, there will be a desire in the future to open up the fire lane to alleviate traffic, which will make 26th Avenue a major thoroughfare to Alameda. My understanding is that there are slightly less than 700 parking spaces designated, which is less than the 1,200 parking spaces that there currently are. However, I wonder whether all of these 1,200 spaces are currently used, since the business park seems to have several vacancies. I go up there and my kids ride around in the parking lot, so I know there's not a lot of cars. I'm also concerned that once this housing project is developed, those individuals who own those homes will want to request and demand that the 26th Avenue be made open in order to have better access to the updated mall, I get it, public transportation, and the Bay Meadows work area. And so I guess a lot of my questions are, when you guys do the traffic consultation, is how many cars are actually being used there currently on a daily basis? I don't know if anyone goes to Laurelwood and Piazzas, but there's barely enough parking there as it is. So I'm just kind of wondering what's that going to also do to the Laurelwood Shopping Center in terms of how people can access that. And then how will those 700 cars do to the 92 traffic that is already backed up in the evenings past Hillsdale? Thank you.
So we have Ying Lee, followed by Laura Duncan.
Hi there. My name is Jing Lee. I currently live in 3135 Campus Drive. And my office place is located at 2755 Campus Drive, which is one of the building will be torn down after this. So my question is very quickly one, what happened to us, I mean, our office, when I will get a final notice, we need to move out or something. So what's the timeline we are looking at here? And by the way, the latest question, I kind of can answer that. We only have 1/3 to 1/4 of the parking spaces using for now. So the traffic's literally light here for now. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Duncan, followed by Michelle Clafter.
Good evening. My name is Laura Duncan. I'm a lifelong resident of San Mateo. I am the current vice president of the Hillsdale High School PTA, former president of the Abbott PTA, and currently a staff member at Meadow Heights Elementary School. And I can tell you, even if the district has told you that there is room in the elementary school district, it is quite compacted, and that is a concern for the future. There is some room at the high school, but this year is their largest enrollment ever. I do want to say, as a teacher who does not make a huge income, I do have some empathy for some reasonably priced homes in the area that is an overpriced place to live. However, I am concerned about the size and density of the project, and I'm also primarily concerned about the traffic and safety impact that this will have on the 26th Avenue, Beresford area near Meadow Heights Elementary School. If the access road is opened, it would have a huge impact on our area, not even so much from the people traveling from their new units to other parts of San Mateo, but I am concerned that Waze or perhaps Google Map type apps will show it as an alternate route to an impacted Highway 92 and make our already narrow, congested residential streets into a boulevard of backed up traffic for people heading to places like Brentwood and Tracy with their overlong commutes from 92. We have a lot of small children and pets, and high schoolers learning to drive in an already very difficult area to drive. I have serious concerns that this would have a negative impact on our community, and I am not assured from what is being said that the access road truly will be staying closed. I know I'm not alone in this concern, and this is my concern that I'd like to present to you. Thank you.
Michelle Clafter, followed by Barbara Evers.
Hello, I'm Michelle Clafter, and I happen to live at the corner of 26th Avenue and Mason. And I don't know how many of you remember, this is like probably be our third, I don't call it a battle, but our third time that this has come up in the last probably 25 years as far as that access road. The last one that I remember was Verona Ridge. It originally was a much larger project than 40 units. And due to a lot of input from the community, our neighborhood, it did shrink to 40. And of course, at the time it sat vacant for quite a while because it was right when the recession hit in 2008, 2009. So there is that issue of that access road. That's one. Number two is the neighborhood. If you drive the neighborhood, you'll see the roads really narrow when you get to the Alameda. It would be extreme. It's already bad and dangerous because there's so many cars from the neighborhood that are parked there. So that's an issue. Even if you keep the access road closed, you still have an issue of cars then going down Hillsdale, down to 31st, down to 28th. That's already congested because of cars that come in from 92. There's that issue. There's another one that I just realized today when I have some drainage issues, and I started realizing there's a lot of aquifer underneath. There's a lot of subterranean creeks that run in. This gentleman spoke about the one big creek, but there are a lot of little creeks that come down. I see water running down our street in the gutters all the time. We've already had to deal with some drainage issues in our house because we're at the base of the hill. So I think environmental impact report, a very serious, very detailed one, is extremely important. There's that issue. And there's then the issue of density. I am for housing. I think you really need to seriously look at the density of this project and consider what was really realistic for the surrounding neighborhood community, both below the construction and also above. Also, a question I have is how many years are we going to be disturbed by construction? It's going to be noisy. I mean, I realize that's limited period of time, but still that's an issue. That's another thing I thought of. And also the high school right now, Hillsdale High School is impacted. They're full. And the other question I have is, it's not related to this, is semi-related to the project, is this issue of Montessori School. Has that permit been already given? Is there going to be issue there regarding opening up the traffic lane, the access lane? I mean, I'm concerned about that. You know, they talk about a Montessori school. Also, that would be a private Montessori school. How many of these people can afford to send their kids to this private school? Will that bring in additional traffic as well? I have lots of other questions, but I'll leave them for someone else to ask them. Thank you very much for listening.
Barbara Evers.
Hello, my name is Barbara Evers, and my husband John and I have lived on 26th Avenue for 35 years, and our girls both grew up here and went to schools, can't afford to live here, so I have to say I do have a very soft spot for affordable housing. I do like that the project has 10% affordable housing. I serve on 2 boards for here, local boards of nonprofits that serve low-income seniors, and I know how tough that is. And so that's something that's on the positive side. I will tell you that I am very, very concerned about the access road, and once you get, well, how many people? I don't know, 1,400 people up there. I mean, I don't know how many people would be in these homes, but I could see a real drive to open up that street. And it is I don't know if you've been on 26th Avenue, but it is if you ever see bicycles go down 26th Avenue, it is like a racetrack. My own husband, unfortunately, was taken by a trauma unit because he was on a bicycle that was going down our street, just on ours. It's kind of in the middle, 747 26th Avenue, and was turning right and lost control of his bicycle. And you will see, I do have a concern of all, people, maybe there aren't, they'll be having those little scooters and bicycles, but that street is just not conducive to a lot of traffic, and that does concern me for safety. Certainly for traffic, it's terrible because it is so narrow. You always have to pull. If there's space on our street, you have to pull over so the other car can pass you. That's all the way down 26th Avenue, all the way to 25th Avenue. So this is something that we have, kind of seen the traffic increase over the years. I do think housing I'm not opposed at all to the housing, but I do think the density needs to be really looked at. And I don't know if you look at single-family housing. I know it's hard to pencil out these projects affordability-wise, but for the developers. But anyway, that is a real concern. The other, I have to say, is we can hear where we are. In fact, right now, how many people hear that noise? Okay, there's this noise going. And what it is, and it's just this constant buzzing in our neighborhood, and it is up at the country club, and it is a well they're digging. My husband got on his bicycle, and it's a well that they're digging, and you can hear it. It's just like it's in your backyard. I thought it was my neighbor across the street. And so noise really carries. Rooftop, I can understand, I'd love to have a rooftop little garden that I had a beautiful view, because we would have a nice view where we live. But the noise that would carry of having, I think, people up there, we can hear the church, we can hear the, CSM, it's going to be impacted. And I am concerned about that. Let's see, what else did I have? Yes, the thing is this, are we going to be notified if like I never knew there was a Montessori school. You know, I'm great. My girls went to Montessori schools, private school when they were younger. But it just concerns me that I guess, I don't know, nobody has heard about this. Maybe other people did that lived in the area, but maybe because they're just taking over an existing office building, they don't have to notify anybody. I don't know. They're just converting it. But I would say that, that I would just wonder, with all the people, let's say this does go through and it happens, are we going to be notified that someone's going to try to open 26th Avenue again? Because we will be out. I mean, the neighbors will be out because it's a real concern. And we just never trust, honestly, that this will remain closed. And to have those ballards, I mean, we have ballards that you're thinking of at one of Leslie Senior Communities, which is one of the nonprofits I work with that is, right at the park there, and they had wanted to put a ballard up there. Well, that's just not, because cars do try to get through there and such, and we got that stopped. So I do think that you need a better barrier than just these ballards, because I don't think that it certainly didn't work for us at the Leslie Senior Communities at Park Towers, right by the park. So that's my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those are all the speaker slips that we have.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this topic? We will close the public hearing. Does staff have answers for some of the questions?
I'll just go ahead and start, and Rendell is project planner, so he can certainly chime in. We've had several meetings with the fire marshal about 26th Avenue. Doesn't need to be opened. We'll examine it again as part of the formal planning application. One of those meetings also included the applicant. We've had phone conversations, all sorts of conversations with the fire department. The fire marshal has indicated there is not a need to open that EVA for public purposes other than for emergency access. We've also had discussions with the fire department, the fire marshal, about fire hazard in the area. And so they've suggested a few things, and certainly we'll refine those as they go through the planning application stage. Certainly, given some of the fires that have occurred in California over the past year, there's an increased sensitivity to fire in areas where there is extensive vegetation. So the fire marshal is aware of that and is going to be reviewing the project with that in mind as well. Whether it means further clearances or things of that nature, they are sensitive to that fact and have started taking a look at that. I would note that there are two state laws that pertain to this project. One that we talked about is density bonus law, which does mandate certain parking restrictions on localities and cities in terms of the maximum parking that they can require. So again, we'll examine that as part of the formal application, but I would just note that the provisions of the state density bonus law call out the use of statewide parking standards, which the city is obligated to employ. As noted in the staff report, this project does not require a general plan amendment or zoning reclassification. Therefore, the Housing Accountability Act does apply to this project. Again, that is a state law that's been imposed on the city by the state legislation, and that law includes very specific findings that the onus is on the city if the city is to either deny or request a reduction in density for a residential project. I'd also note that in terms of the maximum density of this site, if you look at the data sheet, this is well below the maximum density that could be permitted. Lastly, with respect to the issues regarding noise, traffic, any other environmental impacts, that will be reviewed as part of the formal planning application. So certainly we have not done those studies, and the comments that have been made and certainly the comments coming from the commission will be used to determine the scope of work for that environmental document. Rendell, I don't know if there was anything else.
Thank you.
I have a question, Ron, through the chair. Who has final authority if that 26 emergency lane needs to be open? Is that the fire chief, the city, or the applicant itself?
I would think we'll need to look that up, but it would be hard for me to conceive that the city council would open that up without a public hearing. Similarly, there are other areas in town that have cul-de-sacs, that have walls that surround the community. And so certainly if you're going to open something up as a right-of-way, at the very least, there'd have to be an environmental document to indicate traffic, noise, air quality, all of those impacts that may occur with, just like if you establish a new roadway, you're going to have an environmental document. And so if you were to open up 26th, then there would have to be some sort of environmental document to say, okay, well, what is the traffic impact? What are the air quality impacts? So there would have to be a CEQA process that would need to be followed as well.
Ramiro, do you have other questions?
I have a question for the applicant. So the 4 business complexes or the 4 towers that that you're taking down, what's the occupancy of those towers right now as they stand?
I could kind of speak to it over a year because it changes, it's multi-tenanted, but they've been...
or this year?
Yeah. So they've been roughly in the 75% range. And part of what we've been trying to do is obviously preserve this opportunity. So as some tenants have been naturally leaving, we haven't been focused on renewing those spaces. Obviously, if this project were to get turned down, we would lease it all back up, which would be right back up to 90% again. So I do want to just be honest about that.
Okay. And then I believe I ran some reports that you're looking for to start construction in 3 or 4 years. Is that correct? To start construction?
That's a rough metric.
And then construction, I believe, will be anywhere from 12 to 18 months, right?
Yeah,
rough timeline.
One of the nice things about this type of product is it doesn't have as long of a construction cycle as like a potential office development. So it's 12 to 18 months.
Okay. And I understand that the maximum density for this size is 538 units. Is there a reason why you kept it at 291 and not adding more housing units?
It's driven by a variety of factors, but topography, traffic, trying to be sensitive to our neighbors, height. I mean, there's a lot of variables, and that was kind of the sweet spot between trying to take a lot of those considerations into account.
Okay. And are you looking to provide, I know on all the documents it's 2 or 3 or 4 bedrooms. Are you looking to provide other different types of accommodations or unit size from 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms?
So we have 2 bedrooms already.
Okay.
We probably, 1 bedrooms we think probably wouldn't be a great utilization for the site, and those are probably better under transit and things like that, but we're looking at broadening it from 2 to 3. We have 2 and 3 already, and we're looking at incorporating 4 bedrooms as well, so we just have a broader range, and then making more unit sizes within each one of those categories to create a broader range of affordability as well.
And then the 10% for affordable housing, what type of bedrooms are those? Are those 2 or 3?
It's a cross-section of all of the unit mixture.
Thank you.
Through the chair. For staff, with the 291 units and 10% of them going as affordable, and these units are obviously for sale, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so do those affordable units have deed restrictions on their sale? Do they always stay as affordable units?
Yes, it's deeded that it stays within the program. So whenever it sells to another owner that qualifies.
Okay. And are there solar requirements for this site? I don't see any shown on the drawings.
There are subject to the California Building Code and the city sustainability reach codes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they were shown on the plans, that's correct, but in further review, they will be required to show them.
Okay, so there's no covered parking, so really the only place for the solar would be on the roofs?
There's garage parking, right, but I
Right.
would presume that they'd have to go on the roofs.
Okay, and the parking situation, I don't see the numbers, but you're using a lot of tandem spots, and you can do that, obviously, as Ron had mentioned. But with the tandem spots, are you giving the minimum amount of parking that is required to meet the state code?
Yeah, so despite the state requirements, the city's local requirements for parking dimensions will still apply.
Okay, all right. They're being met.
As shown, yeah. That's correct.
All right. I do have a few questions for the applicant. The city has instituted some reach codes as it concerns use of natural gas to, I think, not multifamily, but I think it's just commercial right now, commercial properties. I don't know if you've got any interest in excluding gas to these units also. I would hope you're at least considering that.
We're definitely open to it, and I think in 2020, all buildings have to be electric
All new, right.
for
All new,
residential. So I
yeah.
think we will be meeting that anyway. And
Okay,
then can I go back and answer your solar question? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Oh, yeah. So I think we're looking for those opportunities. We're not necessarily going to convert the whole rooftop, so there could be opportunities for solar in some of the non-converted, usable portions of the rooftop. So that's one thing we're exploring, because one of the things we'll be focusing on next is sustainability attributes and diving deeper into that. But we've been thinking about that. And then on the parking requirement, that was one of the things you asked out in tandem, is we're above the state requirement and meeting the city's code requirement.
Perfect. When I was up there recently looking at the site, it's an incredible looking piece of property. It will be fantastic to remove a tremendous amount of asphalt, which obviously only creates runoff down into that beautiful canyon. Have you considered using permeable surfaces throughout your drives to alleviate some of that off-fall from the natural rain?
I don't think we're kind of quite there in the design process, but it's something we'll definitely collaborate with on staff and our
great.
civil.
Some folks have recently started to do that here in the city voluntarily.
Sure.
For obvious reasons. One of the gentlemen had brought up and Ron had spoken about it a little bit also, is that, the problems that we're occurring now and are going to occur in the future with firestorms. And that obviously already is a wooded area. Your buildings will be built, to a very high degree of safety. But with, ongoing droughts and fire, problems, I would hope that your landscape would be as native and fire resistant as you possibly could, and minimal use of water.
In fact, we're trying to take that even one step further, which is we're looking at a vegetation management plan in the canyon to remove some of the denser brush, and that was part of our working with the fire marshal and on a collaborative and proactive basis. So we're trying to get some of that fuel density out of the canyon, as well as we've already started to cut down some of the eucalyptus trees, which are a huge fire hazard and a safety hazard because they drop a lot of limbs on our adjacent neighbors, which we just did proactively as part of some of the community outreach hearing that we got back. We just started to do that now.
Sure. That's good to hear. And I do know that you were looking at possibly, changing some of your unit sizes. I was hoping you were actually going to decrease a couple where you had maybe one bedroom or studios, so you would have a higher number of units, not necessarily larger units, so that could give you a few more lower cost houses or apartments. So however you work, I think that needs to be a big component. I do appreciate the 10% on the 291 without asking for state bonuses. That's not usually done. So thank you for that. But I think as many as we can get in there feasibly, that works for you guys. Your units are only about 50% of what you could get in there, and working with the site and the traffic flow, I get it. But it's always, encouraging to get a little bit more than less.
Sure.
I don't know, I understand that you are in some type of talks with local union laborers. I hope that makes some progress. We're able to have some organized labor there. Okay, well that's kind of it for my questions, and thank you.
Yeah, I have a few questions too, and then later comments, right? Sure, yeah. I don't know if it's for you or staff, as a couple of things. there were great comments brought up by the public and by you guys as well. I think that, I can talk about those in the comment period, but my questions were, do we know if this is in the fire concern and that whole issue of the canyon and all of that? Obviously, it'll be probably a fully sprinklered building, or they will all be fully sprinklered buildings. Do we know if this is in the WUI, the Wildlife Urban Interface Zone, I think it's called?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great, because that has a lot of requirements for how to address fire-safe building. Let's see, the other comment was, I guess just to clarify all the comments about the emergency vehicle access and the 26th Avenue piece, that's, really good information to have heard from people. But when we talk about opening it, I mean, what we're talking about, and I guess want confirmation of this, it's going to be maintained as a fire access lane, right? That currently is, and that would not change. And so then I guess to confirm that what the neighbors are asking for is that it not be just opened in general to the public. Is there any talk about how much the fire department expects they would have to use it now that there would be 291 units up there? Do they anticipate that they would need to use that, or would that only be in a major disaster, and that normally if there was a small something they were responding to that was small, they would come through the normal, street access? Has there been any discussion with the fire department about that?
Yeah, I think that's one thing we'll take a look at with the formal application. The preliminary conversations with the fire marshal more had to do with a major event that's going to require an alternative means of access, of coming up through 26th Avenue as opposed to coming through Campus Drive.
Yeah.
I think what we'll have to ask the fire department is to what degree the changeover in occupancy from a residential to office may change what their expected service rate is, and whether or not Campus Drive could still be suitably used as emergency access, or if they see an increase in frequency of the use of 26th Avenue. So again, we'll look at that through the formal planning application, but that's been the preliminary conversations we've had with fire up to this point.
Okay, great. I don't have any other questions.
Been a lot of really good questions to date. So I'll just get my few out of the way. When I was up there, I noticed some artwork on the upper parcel that was on the perimeter of the upper parcel. Is that going to remain in place?
It will.
Because there's some nice pieces up there,
Yeah.
and it really adds a lot to the area. I was curious about the pocket parks, and in my packet, it's 5.2 and 5.4, Wendell. Can we see that on the screen? So the whole project is 15.45 acres. And I understand that the open space area is 3.3 acres. But that open space includes the rooftops, it includes the balconies, it includes the walkways, things like that. So on these pocket parks that are located in the corners, how big are they? Can you tell me in square feet? Can you tell me in portions of an acre?
Sure. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up one of my design experts because that's above my pay grade.
Okay.
And it may be one of those things we have to follow up on because we don't have everything
That's
resolved.
fine. I was just curious in relation to everything else.
Hi, Bruce Jett, founding principal of Jett Landscape Architecture and Design. I was actually answering a question from someone in the audience while you were asking your question, so would you mind repeating it for me?
Sure. I was curious about the size of the pocket parks. And there are, on my document, they're noted as number 2. So They appear to be in the corners of the triads. And I wondered what the size of those pocket parks are. Because in looking at the paperwork, we have pictures of various recreational activities around the outside.
Yeah.
And I want to know if those pictures that we're seeing are going to fit into the pocket park, or if it's just a picture of a recreational activity.
Yeah. Oh, those are programming photographs. Not every park will have every element in it. The idea would be to distribute the elements differently into the different parks. They're mini parks. I honestly don't have the exact dimensions of any one of them, but they're more on a mini park, as you're calling them, a pocket park size. We do feel confidently, for instance, in the one in the upper left corner of the upper parcel, that number 2, we call it a tot lot. We feel confident we can get a couple of nice tot play events in that, for instance. And if we wanted to click through some of the other exhibits and show those different events, you can see that we would be working very hard to make sure that we had a variety of activities in each park.
Mm-hmm. I would like to have those estimates.
The dimensions or square footages?
Yeah,
I'd be
at
happy
your
to get those to you.
And I guess one of my questions came from the neighborhood meeting, that one of the answers that was given was that there was a lot of consideration being given to changing the plan, whether higher density, single-family homes. What is that chance? Is this not a done deal? Are we looking at a pre-application that's most definitely going to change, or is this?
Well, I think part of it was coming here to get, obviously that was feedback from the community, but we wanted to get coaching from the Planning Commission to see if those were opportunities that wanted to, and some of the comments I've already heard is, can we go higher density? Can we do some other things? So I think we're open to those changes and happy to accommodate them if that was something that's important.
Okay, those are my questions for now. So we will open it up to the commissioners for comments. Can we start with you?
Brenda, can you put the 3 items for us to talk about? Oh, there you go. Okay, on the special use permit and the site plan. I do agree that, reducing the structure that it currently is now from office space that's current occupancy, that's 70%, to providing residential units in the city of San Mateo is something that we should be looking at. I do are in support of that, but I do also want to look forward to seeing the traffic report and seeing the different models for traffic, because it's only one way in and one way out using Campus Drive for all these 291 residential units. Not just for the residential units, but also for the additional office buildings that will still be left in that area. On the actual building design, I like the actual architectural design of the building. I enjoy the materials being used. I enjoy also the rooftop terrace and the several balconies that it has to offer for the residents. I would like to see more of the pocket parks a little bit more bigger, and also integrate more, if these units are going to be 2, 3-bedroom, some 4-bedroom, so they will have individual multi-families living in these buildings. So I would prefer to have more, how do I say it, older kids, like basketball courts, also all the different play structures and things like that integrated into this, in addition to having more open spaces, more recreational activities that can be done outside. I'm encouraged from the applicant on hearing that they are open to looking at the building density and seeing if they can provide various sizes of units for this. That's not just 2 or 3 bedrooms, but having the opportunity, the possibility to adding more units at various different price structures for the actual construction. I believe that is it for my comments.
Okay, so in looking at the items of discussion, as on screen, the first item is whether or not it's should be approved for special use permit. So a couple of things. I think that the first thing that I looked at, as I have, generally speaking, I looked at the setbacks, and I think that on my page 3.1, it shows that I think it meets all the setbacks, but the one location where it's really close to the single-family residential, or it's the closest in terms of all the rest of the locations around the perimeter, it seems that it could be given a little bit more space, and that's the top right corner on 3.1. So there's one unit that just seems like it goes right to the line, and that happens to be adjacent to not open space or natural vegetation, but residential area. So I would like to see a more consideration for that line of, that's the northern parcel. And maybe that's one way that a slight reduction in density might help that, relieve that line a little bit. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was the issue of noise, because when you look at the requirements for approving the special use permit, it cannot cause excessive noise, smoke, odor, glare, heat, fumes, blah blah blah. And if noise is a concern in the canyon, I think that maybe some reduction of the size of the rooftop areas might alleviate some of that concern, and also provide more space for solar panels, perhaps. So I think some consideration might be given to that, to take a look at that. With regards to the site plan, we talked about the areas of play areas or different use for the open areas, and I think that looks like that's development of that is underway, and I hadn't seen that as clearly as now. That was helpful to have all of those pointed out. With regards to the site plan, I hear the concerns of 26th Avenue, but I do think that if it was a strong condition of approval, that remain as emergency vehicle access only. Any changes in the future would have to go to City Council, as you were saying. Then I feel pretty comfortable that would still be maintained as emergency vehicles only. So that would have to be a condition of approval, though. So I think in terms of the site plan, we've touched on those things, though. A little bit of variety of sizes, perhaps some 2-story units might be an interesting thing to take a look at. The other thing that I thought was interesting is just the current design of a project like this. The projects are designed, I've seen another project like this in Southern California where I was visiting somebody, and the driveways are to the rear of the house, where the garages are, and then the pedestrian area between the buildings is where you would go to the front door. Sometimes they're not very, well, in this particular case where I was, they were not very visible or clear as to where to walk as a pedestrian and where the entry was. It looks like there's a little bit more space here, but I would like to make sure that there's plenty of width between the blocks of buildings so that the front doors are visible to visitors, or the path to the front doors are visible. With regards to the building design, I think we kind of touched on this idea of, maybe going to some reduced sizes or different sizes, but generally I like it. It looks like a dynamic, interesting, combination of materials and, rooftop spaces and decks. So I think it's a good project in that respect. I would say my one thing I don't like personally, and you can see it here on the elevation, is the gables that are in those prominent areas. They seem small and not in keeping. Maybe if they were steeper, they'd have more impact, but they seem unnecessary there to have it as a gabled roof there. I don't know. I guess I'd have to look at the whole roof plan, but that's just my opinion. Let's see. I think the 2 access points, and going back to the site plan, the 2 access points per site seem appropriate and shouldn't be a concern. So I think that was all my. I guess a couple of things on building design. I mentioned this before. I know it's allowed by the state and it's encouraged by the state to encourage higher density housing, but I do feel that the tandem parking is not as desirable, and because of that, there should be a special attention to whether or not the exterior parking could be increased. Again, I don't know if that's allowable by the state, but I think it's worth looking at because there's not a lot of street parking for visitors and such. I guess that's it. I would say this is a great opportunity to look at environmental considerations in addition to Cal Green requirements, such as solar, such as permeable paving, and perhaps, window materials, non-vinyl window materials, that kind of thing. I guess that's about it for now. I think it's everything. Otherwise, I think it's a great project. It's a beautiful site, I'm sure, so this looks like you're doing a really nice job of addressing the views, and they'd be wonderful places to live, I think. Thank you.
Through the chair. I have one question on I'll go to special use permit first. I am very encouraged to see that this land is going to be utilized for housing. I think it's a great opportunity to expand the housing here in San Mateo. Very nice to see 10% being affordable. So I fully support that. I think it's a great move and one that the city desperately needs as we are struggling horribly with housing inefficiencies or deficiencies here in the city. And it appears to work well with the adjacent uses. I do have empathy for the neighborhoods around with their concerns. They're legitimate. They need to be addressed. The builder appears to be very solid with a long track record, but this still is an awful lot of work right in people's backyards. So there's going to be some friction. There's going to be some issues. And I would hope that most of them could be avoided so you can have a nice project and happy neighbors. I like the site plan. I always want more open space. I want to say that I think you need some spaces that they're not only open, but they're active. As Ramiro had mentioned, it's good to have parks with some activities associated with them. The open gardens and all of those are very nice, but I think you also need to have some active uses out there. As far as the building design goes, I've already mentioned that I would like to have some more units on site, and I would hope that the applicant will be looking into that. I do not support the single-family dwellings because I don't think it's an appropriate use of the land. You minimize the amount of square footage, and you don't increase the amount of housing of bedrooms. So I'm not in favor of that. I have one question, and you can see it here on the building design, and that is number 5. I might not be reading the drawings correctly, but are they part of the dwelling? They're the rooftop structures that are, some of them are slanted, some of them are they're all rectangular, but I'm not sure what those spaces represent.
It appears that number 5 it's outlining that it's stucco, but that space is enclosing stair access to the rooftop.
Oh, those are stairs. Okay, so that would correlate to, you've got, what about number 3? Are those stairs also? It's just, they just look kind of odd the way they're sitting on top of those. Right.
Yeah, yes, they are as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you for answering that. I like the design. I think they're simple. I think they're attractive. I'm hoping that they will have above California Green, as my fellow commissioner said. We're getting to a point where products and systems that could get you to near zero emissions is exciting. The scale's good. The materials look nice. Throw in a few more parks, throw in a few more units. I think we got a winner. Thank you.
I too think this is a very beautiful development, and that's saying something because I'm usually pretty crabby about them. But as far as the special use permit, when I was up there, I thought that it looked very compatible with what was going on around it, and it would meld in with that particular style of the buildings and then the surrounding neighborhoods. As far as the site plan goes, we do have a housing shortage. And that said, I think it makes sense to build houses where it makes sense to build them, density-wise and not density-wise. So if it's near a transit corridor, I can see making a much higher density to accommodate people who are going to use public transportation. This is not near public transportation, so I like that this is not as dense. I like that when people will look up at that area from down on the flat, they're going to see something that melds in with the hillside, that doesn't stick out, that doesn't look awkward. That's what I really, really like about this. And I think that the building design works well with the surrounding neighborhoods. I think it's not too modern, and I think that nestled into the hillside there, I think it really works. If there is the feeling that there needs to be more density, if you wanted to play around inside the buildings, that would be, I guess, an easy way to handle that, and maybe make them multi-floor flats or whatever in a couple of the buildings. But I was very pleased to see a development go in there that was not overly dense. I really like the rooftops. I thought that was a really great touch. And I think too that this is a winner. So I know, don't look so shocked. So thank you for your presentation. And this does not require action, so That will be it for your project. Thank you. And are there communications and announcements?
Yes, a few upcoming meetings. I think I'd sent everyone an email about next Wednesday night, 21 Elements is hosting another Planning Commissioners training session. I think it's over at the Oak Room, based on transportation, 6 to 8 p.m. Send me an email, or you know what? I got another reminder from them again today, so I'll send that out. But it's free. You can sign up. I think they have dinner at 6, and then they have the presentation after that. Some of you have been to some of the other sessions that they've hosted. For your next meeting on Tuesday, November the 12th, we have 2 items. One will be a public hearing on 180 East 3rd Avenue, which is the old Aaron Brothers store right there in downtown. And then we will have a study session on 2 West 3rd Avenue. That's the remaining vacant corner at 3rd and El Camino. It had a gas station on it. Right now it's vacant. So there'll be a study session on that particular project. On Saturday, November 16th, we'll be having a general plan workshop. It's a Saturday morning at King Center, and we'll be preliminarily starting to work on alternatives for the various study areas that Saturday, November the 16th. I am not promising anything, but at this point, we do not have any items scheduled for Tuesday, November 26th, which is always the least popular Planning Commission meeting because it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. And then the final meeting of the year in December, we have a study session on the project at El Camino and Jasmine. It's front's on El Camino. The back of it is on Jasmine. It's on the What's Happening page under El Camino and Jasmine if you want to take a look at it. And that's it for the Planning Commission meetings in 2019.
Did you have an other, Ramiro?
No, I would not be here for the November 12th meeting.
Okay, got it. November the 12th.
Any other announcements?
No, none for me.
Meeting is adjourned.
Those items on the agenda